They say you're too sensitive. But what if they're just too numb to feel what you feel? You're not tired because you do too much. You're tired because you carry too much. Every room, every silence, every shift in someone's tone, your body absorbs it all. And yet you still show up. Smile. Hold space. But when was the last time someone held space for you? In this video, I'm not here to tell you to push through. I'm here to show you how sensitive souls protect their peace without hardening their heart, and how burnout isn't the end, it's the whisper that it's finally time to return to yourself. There's a kind of exhaustion no one warns you about. The kind that comes from sensing everything, even what no one says out loud. As a highly sensitive person, your body becomes a radar, scanning tone, energy, silence, tension in the air. You walk into a room and feel what others are too polite to mention. And while they carry on like everything's fine, you're already holding their sadness, their tight jaws, their quiet disappointment. It's not something you choose, it just happens. And it leaves you wondering, why can't I turn this off? Some call it a gift, some call it a curse. But truthfully, emotional sensitivity is both. You feel love deeply, but also tension, rejection, and change. Even when no one says a word, your nervous system knows. The slight pause before someone answers, the tone shift mid-sentence, the door left slightly ajar when someone walks out of the room. None of it escapes you, and it makes life feel like a constant flood, too much, too soon, too often. I used to think I was broken, too dramatic, too emotional, too intense, but now I understand it wasn't too much. It was just unseen. Because this world often rewards what's loud, confident, fast. And you feel slow, quiet, absorbing. You're the one who cries during commercials, who senses lies through smiles, who can't sleep because someone you love is hurting, even if they didn't tell you. This is what they never tell you about being an empath. That sometimes it's not about helping, it's about holding. Holding the pain others drop in the room. Holding the emotions they won't process. Holding the unspoken tension that makes your chest tight. And because you were never taught how to protect your own energy, you end up absorbing everything and blaming yourself for not being stronger. You call it emotional burnout, but really, it's just the cost of carrying more than one soul should. I once had someone tell me, "You're just too sensitive. Toughen up." And for a while, I believed them. I tried to harden, numb out, disconnect. But the truth is, when I cut off my sensitivity, I also cut off my spiritual intuition, my creativity, my sense of connection to the universe. Because your sensitivity isn't just emotion, it's intelligence. It's a deeper knowing, the kind that doesn't always use words. And when you shut that down, something sacred goes quiet. So now I ask you this gently. What part of you have you silenced just to be accepted? What feelings have you swallowed just to be easy to love? Your sensitivity is not your flaw, it's your frequency. You were never meant to toughen up. You were meant to feel with wisdom, to carry energy not as weight, but as awareness, to sense the undercurrents, not to drown in them, but to learn how to float, even when no one else sees the waves. I used to hide in bathrooms at family events, just to breathe, just to feel myself again. Too many voices, too much small talk. No, one noticed the noise wasn't outside, it was inside me. That thundering ache in the chest, that tightening behind the eyes. People thought I was quiet, but I was burning from the inside out, holding the weight of every glance, every unsaid word. That's what being a highly sensitive person feels like. I thought I was crazy for needing so much solitude. Everyone else could hang out for hours, laugh without thinking, and I'd sit there smiling politely, while my whole body screamed for a moment alone. Because HSPs don't just feel, we absorb. We carry the mood of the room in our ribcage. We sense the tension in someone's shoulders, even before they do. And when we finally say we're tired, it's not just fatigue, it's overload. Sometimes I'll walk past someone and feel sadness. That doesn't belong to me, but sticks like smoke. Other times, I cry during songs I've never heard before, or feel waves of nausea in a room where no one's speaking. People say, you're just sensitive, like it's a defect, but they don't know what it's like to carry emotional sensitivity as a second skin, to feel the world static before the storm even begins. It's not weakness, it's a different kind of knowing. It took me years to realize this wasn't brokenness. This was a spiritual gift of sensitivity, a quiet channel the universe speaks through, in sensations, chills, inner alarms. That deep feeling in your gut when something's off, that's not anxiety, it's intuitive intelligence. But no one teaches you how to trust it. They tell you to toughen up, stop overthinking, as if your nervous system isn't screaming for protection. I can still remember the first time I felt like I was too much. I had just asked for space, not because I was angry, but because I was overstimulated and on the verge of shutting down. They rolled their eyes, called me dramatic, and I remember thinking, maybe I am. Maybe I really do ask for too much. Quiet honesty, depth. But now I see it clearly. Those were my needs, not my flaws. And so I ask you, have you ever felt effective for needing peace? Have you ever apologized for being affected too deeply? You're not alone. There are signs you're an HSP that no test can show, like how you cry in silence because your chest is too heavy for words, or how you shrink during conflict just to avoid the crash. You're not broken. You're built differently, and while others build walls, you carry open windows, even when the wind hurts. Spiritual intuition isn't loud. It doesn't compete. It doesn't shout over the noise. It waits. In the body of a highly sensitive person, this wisdom moves like breath. It flickers in the chest, tightens the gut, softens the skin. It speaks through subtle chills when something isn't right, or a sudden wave of calm when you're in the right place. Unlike logic, intuition doesn't explain, it just knows. But because it's quiet, many sensitive souls have learned to doubt it, to silence it, to call it overthinking when it was guidance all along. This is the part no one tells you. Being emotionally sensitive means your nervous system listens faster. Before someone says a word, before a moment unfolds, the body has already decided what the mind will take hours to understand. That's not anxiety, it's ancestral intelligence. An inner radar, shaped by generations of emotional survival. The empath struggles begin when no one validates this sensitivity. When you sense something deeply but are told to ignore it, that disconnection becomes a kind of inner betrayal. For empaths and intuitives, the universe doesn't speak in words. It speaks in shifts, the sudden drop in energy, the sigh you didn't expect, the feeling of being watched without reason. Those are messages, not paranoia. This kind of emotional sensitivity is sacred. It turns the body into a vessel of knowing, a sacred antenna tuned to the frequencies others miss. When nurtured, it becomes protection. When ignored, it becomes pain. That's why so many sensitives experience emotional overload. They haven't learned how to distinguish intuition from fear. They confuse feeling too much with being unstable. But intuition isn't chaos, it's clarity before the noise. It doesn't demand, it invites. And when respected, it teaches how to live from the inside out. How to trust the feeling in your chest more than the mask in their smile. This is how sensitive souls navigate. Not with control, but with quiet awareness. I once sat with a patient. Let's call her Anna. She said, I used to think I was just anxious. But now I see I was right the whole time. For years, Anna had ignored the signals. The pain in her stomach when someone lied. The dream that warned her days before something happened. The sudden stillness before a fight would erupt. She called it coincidence, until it nearly broke her. Now she calls it what it is, guidance. Anna's story isn't rare. There are countless others like her. People who thought they were imagining things, when in truth, they were just listening too early. They had a radar, a whisper from something greater. The universe had always been speaking, but no one had taught them how to listen. So they learned to shut it down, and in doing so forgot how to trust themselves. Empaths are wired to care. They notice what others miss, the unspoken, the avoided, the heavy. But what no one teaches is that caring without boundaries becomes self-erasure. Because when you feel someone's discomfort, you naturally want to ease it, even if it costs your energy, even if it means swallowing your truth. That's how so many highly sensitive people begin to disappear. Not all at once, but in small, daily compromises. They stop saying no, they stop being honest. And slowly, their peace becomes permission for others to cross the line. Emotional sensitivity without boundaries becomes emotional overload. You start to feel everything and lose track of what's actually yours. Your nervous system becomes the landing ground for everyone else's chaos. And because you don't want to hurt anyone, you carry it all. Quietly, gently, with a smile that hides the storm. The burden grows, but the voice shrinks. Empaths often say yes when they mean please don't, and then wonder why they're exhausted by connection. It's not the love that drains you, it's the lack of limits. Setting boundaries as an empath feels like betrayal at first. Like saying I matter too is selfish. But boundaries aren't walls, they're doorways to clarity. They say, I love you and I love me too. They separate your soul from the expectations that suffocate it. Without boundaries, your kindness becomes currency. You give more than you can afford. And eventually, your body sends the bill. Through fatigue, resentment, anxiety, even insomnia. Many sensitive souls confuse compassion with compliance. They think being understanding means being available. But empathy without discernment invites emotional manipulation, especially in dynamics like empath versus narcissist, where one gives endlessly and the other never feels full. True energy protection for empaths begins with saying no without apology, with honoring your limits as sacred, with realizing you can care and still close the door when needed. You are not the solution to everyone's suffering. I once worked with a woman named Elise. She told me, I thought being kind meant never saying no. Elise had spent years over-functioning, hosting, helping, agreeing, explaining, until she couldn't feel herself anymore. One day, she declined a request and shook for hours, not because it was wrong, but because it was new. Her body had only known peace as permission. Now it was learning peace as protection. Elise's healing began the day she said, I love them, but I'm not their rescue plan. She stopped answering every late-night crisis call. She stopped over-explaining her quiet. And slowly, she began to sleep again, to breathe deeper, to feel her own energy return. She didn't become hard, she became whole. And in that wholeness, she found something rare. Love that didn't require her to disappear. For most of their lives, sensitives are taught to hide, to shrink, to be less reactive, less intense. They grow up believing their softness is a liability, that they need to be tougher to survive. But what if it's the opposite? What if their sensitivity is exactly what this world needs more of? Sensitivity, when understood, becomes strength, not in the traditional sense, not louder, faster, harder, but in the quiet resilience of staying open in a world that numbs. Turning sensitivity into strength starts with shifting the story. From I'm too much to I feel deeply and that's power. It's not about becoming immune. It's about becoming intentional, choosing where your energy goes, honoring your own capacity without guilt, letting your intuition guide your yes and your no. That's how healing through sensitivity begins, when the very thing that once made you feel weak becomes your greatest compass. Highly sensitive people often excel in intuitive healing work, not because they're better, but because they listen differently. They feel subtleties others miss. They know what grief sounds like in silence. They understand how pain hides in politeness. They don't fix, they feel. And sometimes, feeling with someone is the most powerful form of healing. Not rushing them, not solving, just holding. That's how sensitivity becomes service. The strength isn't in building armor, it's in learning rhythm. Knowing when to retreat, when to speak, when to stay still. Creating rituals that restore instead of numb. Learning how to protect without hardening. That's what energy protection for empaths really is. Not walls, but wisdom. Not isolation, but intentional solitude. This is how sensitive people begin to thrive, by working with their nature, not against it. I once had a client, Nina, who told me, I thought I was weak because I couldn't handle what others could. She worked in a high-pressure job, surrounded by noise, deadlines, conflict. Every day she came home feeling sick, emotionally sore, energetically bruised. She thought something was wrong with her. Until one day, she cried watching a stranger help a child cross the street. And in that moment, she realized, this heart, it's not broken. It's just wide open. And that is a different kind of strength. Nina began to reshape her life. She started a small creative studio, quiet, slow, meaningful. She took long walks instead of forcing herself to network. She painted instead of scrolling. She learned how to hear herself again. And the more she listened, the more she bloomed. Not into someone tougher, but into someone true. She didn't need to be like everyone else. She needed to be more like herself, and that changed everything. The world isn't built for softness. It rewards noise, speed, confidence without reflection. And yet, some of the wisest people walk slowly. They cry in private. They sense things early. Sensitive souls are often the last to speak. But when they do, it's with truth that echoes. Thriving as a sensitive person doesn't mean becoming louder. It means becoming aligned, honoring your nervous system like a sacred compass. To thrive is to learn your rhythm, to stop chasing what others define as success, and start asking what nourishes my peace. Maybe it's slower mornings. Maybe it's leaving parties early. Maybe it's choosing purpose over performance. Self-care for empaths is not optional, it's oxygen. When you feel everything, rest becomes rebellion, and stillness becomes strength. Many HSPs suffer from emotional burnout not because they're weak, but because they're absorbing what was never theirs to carry. They work in chaotic environments. They stay in relationships that demand emotional labor. They ignore the signs, the tight chest, the can't sleep nights, the drained mornings, and they call it life. But it's not life, it's disconnection. Thriving begins the moment you stop adapting to chaos and start building your own rhythm of peace. The universe doesn't ask you to fit in. It asks you to remember who you were before you were told you were too much. What lit you up before you learned to dim your voice. There's no single path to thrive as an empath, but every path starts with permission to be gentle, to feel, to move differently, to create a life that doesn't exhaust your system. One breath, one boundary, one brave no at a time. I once worked with a woman named Mara. She whispered during our first session, I feel like I'm not built for this world. She was raw, exhausted, always overstimulated. Every noise felt sharp. Every demand felt too much. She wasn't depressed. she was disconnected from herself. So we built a life that fit her nervous system, not the other way around. She started waking before the world, walking barefoot in the grass, working only with clients who valued presence over performance. Now Mara says, I used to think I was defective, but my sensitivity is the most intelligent part of me. It's how I create. It's how I connect. Now I use it to help others slow down and come home to themselves. That's what thriving looks like for a sensitive soul. Not running, but returning. Not proving, but simply being. Soft, steady, and completely, unmistakably whole. And if the world ever made you feel like your softness was a flaw, may this be your reminder. You were never too much. You were simply tuned into what others learned to ignore. Your peace is not a luxury. It's your natural state. And you're allowed to return to it without explanation, without guilt, without delay. If this spoke to something quiet inside you, would you like a next video with a simple, powerful test to find out? Are you a highly sensitive person? Let me know in the comments. And let's walk this path of softness and strength together.